They say pleasure is the reward. But what if it's the escape? What if the chocolate, the scrolling, the flirting, the laughing are just costumes worn by something far older and far more painful? So let me ask you, when was the last time you felt full, not entertained, not satisfied for 5 minutes, but truly, deeply full? So full you didn't need anything, no craving, no reaching, no grasping. Because here's the truth. We live in the age of pleasure, but we are starving. Carl Jung warned, the things we chase for comfort are often the same things that keep us from healing. And today, you're going to see pleasure in a way you never have before. Let's begin. Imagine this. You wake up. You grab your phone. You don't even know why. There's no emergency, no joy waiting. Just the habit, moving faster than hunger. A reel makes you laugh for 3 seconds. You smile, and then you forget it ever happened. So you scroll again and again, somewhere in that endless black hole. The day disappears, but the ache doesn't. You put the phone down. Maybe you eat something sweet or salty or both. And then the shame creeps in. Because you weren't hungry. Not really. You just needed something. But that something wasn't food. It wasn't dopamine. It was silence. It was escape. It was a break from the storm. The storm you've never been able to name. Let me show you how Jung saw it. He said, every person carries a shadow, a hidden self, buried beneath distraction, and pleasure is the sword. When you eat, not because you're hungry. When you scroll, not because you care. When you crave, not because you love. You're not choosing joy, you're choosing anesthesia. And here's the brutal truth. Most pleasure isn't pleasure. It's relief from self-awareness. But the price is high, because every hit of fake pleasure makes you hungrier for the real thing. And when you can't find it, you feel broken. You're not broken. You're just unconscious of the fact that you've been trained, conditioned to run. To escape anything that feels like discomfort, unconscious that the pleasure you chase is a symptom, not a solution. So let me take you deeper. You're 6 years old. You cry. No one comes. No one listens. So you learn. Feeling bad gets me nothing. But when you smile, when you perform, when you distract yourself, people approve. People stay. People like you. And that reward sticks, so you repeat for years into adulthood, where your pain becomes invisible and your pleasures become louder. Louder than your loneliness, louder than your fear, louder than the child inside you, who just wanted to be held. But here's what most people never realize. Pleasure has memory. Every time you use it to silence pain, you wire your nervous system to fear silence. That's why you can't sit still. That's why you need music in the shower. That's why silence feels like punishment. And Jung saw this. He saw how pleasure, when misused, becomes an enemy of the soul. Not because pleasure is bad, but because we use it wrong. The real enemy is what pleasure lets us avoid. And before we go further, I want you to do something. If this resonates, if you've ever felt that weird shame after indulging in something that was supposed to bring joy, subscribe, not just to help this message reach more people, but because you are not alone in this. and comment below. What part of this has hit you the hardest so far? It's not weakness to name it. It's strength to witness it. Now let me show you the trap. Picture someone walking through the desert, chasing mirages. Every time they run toward one, it disappears. But they don't stop. They convince themselves. The next one will be real. That's what false pleasure is. Pleasure without purpose. And here's the cruel irony. Real joy, the kind that feeds the soul, is quiet. It doesn't demand. It doesn't distract. It doesn't deceive. It expands you. It's in a deep conversation. It's finishing something that scares you. It's waking up and realizing you no longer need the thing that used to own you. But we don't crave that kind of joy because it's not easy, and yet it's the only kind that's real. Jung wrote, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul." And pleasure is the most beautiful absurdity we've ever invented. Let's go deeper. You're a child again. You fall, you scrape your knee, it hurts, you cry, and someone says, "Here, have a cookie, don't cry." Or stop crying, look, the TV's on. And that moment doesn't just pass, it stays, not consciously, but neurologically. Your brain learns. Pain is punishment, feeling is weakness, and the solution? Pleasure. So you grow. And without realizing it, you become fluent in distraction. Pleasure becomes your translator. It speaks when you're too afraid to say, "I'm not okay." It dances when you're too exhausted to admit, "I feel empty." It smiles when everything inside you wants to scream. But here's what no one tells you. Every time you trade emotion for stimulation, you lose intimacy with yourself. Jung warned, when the inner world is ignored, the outer world gets louder. And what is pleasure, if not the loudest thing in our lives? The ping, the scroll, the glow, the noise, they scream. So we don't have to listen. But listen to what? This. The pain beneath, the ache for meaning, the craving to belong, the ache of being unseen. You see, pleasure isn't bad, it's sacred when chosen with intention, but it becomes poison when it replaces presence. So let me ask you, have you ever felt guilty after pleasure? After watching one more episode? After texting someone you knew you shouldn't? After buying something you didn't need? After eating when you weren't hungry? That guilt isn't because you did something bad. It's because a part of you knows. You weren't actually fed. You just avoided the hunger. And this is where most people misunderstand Jung. They think shadow work is about becoming darker, wilder, more chaotic. Wrong. Shadow work is about looking straight at the moments when you lied to yourself for relief and saying, "I see you, and I choose truth over escape." Let me give you a story. There was someone who couldn't stop chasing relationships. They told themselves they were hopelessly romantic. But every relationship ended the same: intensity, obsession, crash, repeat. And when someone asked why they couldn't stop, they said, I love too much. But that wasn't the truth. What they loved was distraction, because when they were alone, silence got too loud. The noise of everything unhealed became unbearable, and the truth is, they never learned how to sit with their wounds. So pleasure became plastic, cheap, thin, breakable, until one day, it didn't work anymore. This story isn't rare. It's the invisible story of millions. People who confuse craving with love, stimulation with joy, numbness with healing. And the danger isn't that these pleasures exist. The danger is when you never ask why you need them. This is the myth we have to destroy. Pleasure is not healing. Pleasure is not peace. Pleasure is not power. Pleasure is a tool, and tools, when misused, become weapons against yourself. Let's flip it. Think about the last time you resisted instant gratification, when you didn't send that text, didn't answer that craving, didn't hit that click. And afterward, you felt proud, you felt calm, you felt free. Why? Because discipline isn't just control, it's self-trust, and trust is the real high. Why? Because when you trust yourself, pleasure stops owning you. You become the chooser, the master, the sovereign. And that's when pleasure becomes beautiful again. Not a drug, not a chain, but a celebration. Now imagine this. You walk into a room. There's no noise, no phone, no screen, just you. And instead of panic, you feel at home. Not because you have everything, but because you are everything. That is what Jung meant by individuation, becoming whole. Not through denial, not through constant dopamine spikes, but through integration, the ability to feel pleasure without using it as anesthesia, the ability to enjoy silence without fearing it, the ability to be with yourself and actually like who you're with. That's the goal. But you don't get there by chasing louder highs. You get there by turning down the volume and listening to what the noise was covering. What does that look like? It looks like noticing when your hand reaches for the phone and asking, "What am I avoiding?" It looks like letting yourself feel the loneliness without drowning it in sugar or sex or scrolling. It looks like choosing the slower pleasures, the ones that take effort, the ones that demand presence, the ones that reward you later. Because here's the hidden truth. Real pleasure is never instant. It's earned. The best laughter is with someone you trust. The best meal is after a long day of meaningful effort. The best connection is after a conversation where you felt truly seen, not just distracted. So let me give you a pause. If this message is shaking something loose inside you, good. That's what awakening feels like. It's not loud. It's not dramatic. It's quiet. It's decisive. And the decision is simple. Do I keep numbing the ache with cheap pleasures? Or do I finally meet myself fully, bravely, without anesthesia? Carl Jung believed that our neuroses don't come from trauma itself, but from our refusal to face what the trauma left behind. And pleasure, when used unconsciously, guarantees we never face it. But now that you see it, what are you going to do? So here we are. You've heard the warnings. You've felt the tremors of recognition. You've watched the mask of pleasure start to slip. And now comes the part no one wants to face. The truth that doesn't just sting, it shatters. Because to truly reclaim your life from false pleasure, you have to admit something terrifying. You lied to yourself, not once, but quietly, daily, over time. Every time you reached for the quick fix, every time you told yourself, just 5 more minutes, every time you avoided silence because it was too loud, every time you whispered, "This makes me feel good," when really, it just helped you forget. But listen carefully. This isn't shame, it's awakening. You are not weak for doing what you thought kept you safe. You are not broken for wanting what numbed the ache. You were surviving. But now, you're finally ready to live. Because once you see the loop, once you understand that the highest pleasure was never joy, it was sedation, everything changes. The party doesn't hit the same. The scroll doesn't scratch the itch. The hookup doesn't fill the hole. The sugar doesn't drown the scream. because the real ache was never shame. It was the absence of yourself. Let me paint it like this. Imagine your life is a house, and inside lives your wounded child, your ignored truth, your unmet memory. But instead of walking through the front door to meet them, you built an entire entertainment system on the lawn, music blaring, candy, noise, comfort. You throw a party on the lawn while your inner child waits, invisible, forgotten, watching. That's what unconscious pleasure does. It builds a carnival outside your own house, so you never have to go in. But the real suffering, the real work, is walking through the silence, opening the front door, sitting with that child, looking them in the eyes and saying, "I'm here now. You can speak." This is the work Jung spoke of. He never wanted people to become addicted to silence. He wanted them to stop fearing it, to understand silence isn't the absence of life. It's the presence of everything you've been running from. And now, here's the climax, the final myth that has to die. You were sold the lie that pleasure is the goal, that happiness means feeling good, that the more you indulge, the freer you are. But freedom isn't doing whatever you want. It's not needing to. Real pleasure isn't the chocolate. It isn't the phone. It isn't the dopamine hit. It isn't the full stomach. Real pleasure is the moment you realize you no longer need to be distracted from yourself. You can sit in silence and smile, not because it's empty, but because it's full. Full of presence, full of truth, full of power. You become the kind of person who doesn't chase the high, because you carry peace. And people will notice. They'll say you've changed. You'll speak slower. Pause more. Laugh less often, but more deeply. And they'll ask, "Why don't you drink anymore? Why aren't you on social media? Why didn't you text back right away?" And you'll smile, because they won't understand. You're not avoiding anymore. You're simply present. And that terrifies most people, because when someone no longer needs pleasure to feel okay, they become powerful, uncontrollable, unexplainable, unmarketable, untouchable. Pleasure no longer owns them. Addictions lose their grip. Marketing loses its spell, because presence has returned. And presence is the purest form of rebellion. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And who you are is not a dopamine addict. You are not a bundle of cravings. You are not a consumer of feelings. You are a creator of meaning. And meaning isn't always pleasant. In fact, it's rarely pleasant. It's exhausting. It's inconvenient. But it's real. And it will feed you in ways that pleasure never could. So the next time the craving shows up, pause. Not to fight it, not to shame it, but to ask, what do I actually need right now? That question alone can change everything, because it breaks the loop. It hands you the pen. It reminds you, you are not your hunger. You are the one who chooses how to feed it. So let me leave you with this. You will never look at pleasure the same way again, not because it's bad, but because now you see it clearly. You will still laugh, still love, still enjoy the sweetness of life. But you'll do it consciously, and that consciousness will protect you from ever selling your peace for temporary comfort. It will make your joy sacred, your relationships cleaner, your habits stronger, and your silence holy, because the pleasure you no longer have to chase is the only kind worth having. If this woke something up inside you, write it below. I don't chase pleasure. I choose presence. Put it into words. Make it real. And if this message mattered to you, share it, like it, subscribe. Not because this video needs it, but because someone you know is still stuck in the loop, and they don't even know it yet. And the next video, it won't be easier, just deeper. I'll see you there.